What's up, fam? Welcome back to Entrepreneur Hour Podcast and Entrepreneur Hour TV, where we create superhuman entrepreneurs. We're going to talk about something today that I think some people get to a degree, and then I think that there's some opportunities that maybe they haven't thought of, right? And then also, I think there's some people, specifically the online or the offline space, that they just don't connect the dots on this at all. And that's repurposing. So what does it mean? What can you do with it? And how can you nuance it further to milk every little thing you create as far as you possibly can? And then talk about what's good for what platforms, what you should be considering, what different modalities or forms you can create of all this various content that you're putting out into the world. So that's what you're focused on in your business, or if that's what you need help with, we're going to talk to an expert in that specifically today. It's what she does, and she's been all over the world and on some big podcasts talking about it. So Shaina Weisinger, welcome to the show.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I know I was, like I said, I was doing research on your business before we started recording. I was telling you about that. And it looks like that's kind of what the core concept of what you do, the core value proposition of what you do is helping people with repurposing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I kind of set out to come up with a solution for people to be able to utilize their content across all the social media channels. So we heavily repurpose for social media specifically. Now there's like tons of ways you can repurpose content beyond that in the long form, but we are really good at taking existing content, sometimes new content, but in most cases it's existing longer form content and utilizing them all across social channels in a ton of different ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's go back even further. Let's talk about how you fell into that world. Did you start as like a social media manager, or where did you kind of realize that this was a huge inherent need that people had and you could find a career in it?
Yeah, actually, my background is in video production. Like when I was 12, I was the only person who knew how to work the video camera at my house. So I went to school for film, and I kind of fell into video for marketing. I was at an Infusionsoft conference when it was in Arizona way back in the day.
Cool.
And I was running around doing some freelance work, and a lot of people kept coming up to me saying, like, we know we need video. Is this what you do? And it was like one or two trains of thought. They either spent way too much money having video done for like a one-time shot on YouTube. It's like a 10-minute epic about how awesome their company is, which is ridiculous. Or they their cousin's brother had iMovie at the time and they got it on the cheap and it was garbage, right? So there was this real need for strategy in video production. And at the time, there weren't a lot of companies that did both of those things. So initially, I had a video marketing company. And in that, I was doing video podcasts for clients because it's what we're doing here, right? It's a long form, consistent type of format of content that's a give value prop. It's great for cross promotion. And as I was trying to sell that service to more and more clients, one of the things that I was offering within that service was these repurposed assets. So we would trim the asset to a little short clip, do the captions, the headline, basically Gary Vee it for you. And I got the same thing over and over from these prominent podcasters. And they were like, we don't really care about the video aspect, but if you only gave us those repurposed assets, we would be all about it. And so I was like, there's got to be somebody who's already doing it. And there really wasn't. There are tools that you could do it yourself, and that's fine. It just takes time and, energy to sit there and edit captions. Or there were these full-scale agencies that included it possibly as a part of like a larger package, but there wasn't just a niche service that specialized in just these repurposed assets for social media. And so that's when we got this rolling.
So as I understand it then, so you're basically, you guys are a service provider then. So if somebody needs some of those clips pulled from whatever it is, whether it's audio or video now is what you're doing. You do both or just the audio?
It's actually audio, video, or text. Blogs, we will actually take blogs and turn them into text motion videos that are all animated for social. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So that's really, really good to know. And, in terms of, and I think this is really important for those that are creating a lot of content already. And I know we're going to talk about some offline stuff with people that they don't get it. I told you before we hit the record button that I work with a lot of offline business. Like I've kind of lived in all these different worlds and these different verticals, right? I've done stuff in the tech space. I've done stuff in the online. I have an online business. I've had my previous business within the offline world. A couple of the things that I see as the online business people, they probably even know what repurpose means if they're not already doing it. But I think there's some big opportunities in those other spaces that people, they're not creating content. They don't get it. They just think people are playing on Facebook and they don't understand why people are doing that. It's like a waste of time. And it's funny because even in some of those other verticals, when I'm, doing things, they're like, oh yeah, well, Chris interviews people, and then they don't see like the value of why I'm doing it. And I'm like, well, the connections alone are invaluable, let alone what I'm doing to actually build brand. Like, I don't think they understand that. So talk about the real opportunity of again, the people that get it, maybe they understand this, so just reinforce it. But the people that don't get it at all, what's the real value as you see it in creating content for one, and then repurposing it as a part 1A?
Yeah, for sure. So content in general is just, it's leveraging your authority in your space. So
Yes.
it's showing your knowledge in whatever it is that you're awesome at, right? And it's giving people value. So what's happening is you're creating a piece of content, whether it's a podcast where you're interviewing somebody and they are another expert in the field, or it's a blog post, or you're just creating like educational videos where you're answering the questions that you are asked constantly in your business. Or if it's like you do a lot of speaking and it's taking that content because that's beneficial to the people in the room, why wouldn't it be beneficial to an entire audience online of those
Yeah.
same types of people, right? So really it comes down to, okay, content in general is very important because it validates your authority. It builds trust. So people will learn to trust you online without you physically having to be there, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to be in a room one-on-one with them. They're seeing your face, they're getting value from you. So when the time comes when they're like, this is something that I need, you're the obvious choice for them to choose as the provider or the product or whatever it is that you're selling. And really all that repurposing is taking the efforts of the longer form content that you've created and giving them tons of extra mileage and squeezing all the juice out of it that you can. Because if you have this long form stuff, you can take tiny snippets of them that were very impactful, hopefully multiple tiny snippets of every piece, and put them on different social media platforms strategically so they're getting in front of more people, because that's the opportunity you have to have people engage with it. And what that means is they can like it, comment on it, share it, whatever. And then then their audience is seeing your content. So it's really just a matter of spider webbing your content
Mhm.
out there so your face is seen, you're being you're showcasing your authority, and you're building trust with an audience that you otherwise would have never had an opportunity to connect with.
Do you think that the reason, so the way I see it is, and thank you for that explanation. That was fantastic. That was exactly like right, spot on. Um,
Awesome.
the way that I see it is, it's like if you had the chance to put out a free commercial for your business in different formats, right? So there's like 30-second spots, there's Super Bowl
Mhm.
ads, there's this, there's 5-second clips. Like that's really what you're doing is, you know, you're teasing what it is that you offer, or showing off the reasons why people should eventually like follow you, like your brand, buy your stuff, etc. Or like a movie trailer, right? Like you show you little clips so that you're going to
Yes.
want to go watch the full movie, rather than, you know, like, okay, here's this movie that we created and here's the name. Do you want to see it? It's like, no, no, no. Like you have to kind of build value in the movie itself, right? So to me, I don't know if that's a perfect metaphor for what we're talking about, but I think people get confused about what this is and how to use it, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs online that they're posting pictures with fancy cars, or they're, you know, talking about this vacation they went on. Like it's not really business focused. Do
Mhm.
you think that people need a blend of those two, where there are some lifestyle pictures and then there is some business related stuff? How do they determine what percentage should be what?
Yeah, you know what? I think that it depends. If it's a personal brand, absolutely. Like, well, realistically, if it's any brand, humanity matters. People want
Sure.
to do business with people, right? So if it's a personal brand, like some of my most engaged posts are me doing stupid stuff with my dogs or whatever, but it
Right.
also is in addition to like, here's the value that I give, here's my expertise, but I'm also a real human being. And so
Mhm.
people want to see what they feel like is an actual real human connection. So it's important to still be able to sprinkle that in there. I mean, depending on what your brand is, what you're
Sure.
selling, what your audience is, the platform, like there's all these different variables as to like what that ratio should be. But I mean, ultimately, people should know that when they see your face, there's likelihood that they're going to get some value out of whatever it is that you're going to be talking about or mentioning. And even if that value is just a laugh because it's a cool photo or funny photo, or just like, oh, that's interesting. Like it doesn't matter as long as they know that when they see you, they want to see whatever it is you're putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally makes sense. What do you think the big opportunity is with repurposing that people are currently, again, I mentioned before, I think people understand it to a degree. Like I take a
Mhm.
video and then I make a shorter clip of that video and I put that on social media. Like I think everybody kind of understands that aspect of it. But what are some bigger opportunities kind of going beyond that, that you find that most people just don't get, or they just miss out on?
Yeah. So being very strategic
Mm,
in why you're repurposing content, knowing what your best case scenario end game is. What are the steps, 4 steps after they watch that video going to be that would be
interesting.
best case for you, right? So a friend of mine, actually one of our clients, he stole it from one of his clients. I don't even know where it originated from, but they were like, you can't deposit likes. And ultimately,
Yeah.
for the vast majority of us, you can't, because we're not like sponsoring other people's items because we have these massive audiences, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, likes are great, but a potential client taking action on my lead magnets is much better for me. I would rather my audience be a 10th of the size, but it's a very engaged audience. It's actually doing what I want them to do in the long run, right? So the opportunity that you have when it comes to repurposed content is creating your base content to be very strategic. So like, for instance, if you say, your base level, when I say base content, it's the long form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're going to talk about one of the big questions you get asked, what are the 7 things I must never do when brewing my tea? I don't know, right? You know that when you go in there, you're going to have 7 different things that you talk about, 7 different tips, but you also know now you have 7 different individual assets that you can post all over social media. And then you have the human mind likes to work in loops. So numbers do really well. So when you say on a little repurposed asset, hey, tip 2 of 7 on the things you make sure you never do when brewing your tea, now their brain wants to close the loop and know what the other ones are.
Yeah.
So then you have the opportunity to say, to watch or read or whatever the rest of the content is, the remaining 6 go here. Now you're driving people off of the platform onto your website where hopefully you have a lead magnet, a pop-up, you're getting their information somehow, or at least you're retargeting them or doing something. And then you have an opportunity to continuously market to them outside of the platform.
Yes.
To just put something on social, like there's something to be said for brand awareness there, but ultimately like you need to know what your end game is and you need to consistently be pushing them to that finish line.
Okay. So what I hear you saying, and I just want to make sure we clarify this because I want to make sure people understand this because I preach this all the time, is you mentioned you're getting them to the website. I see a lot of people that there really isn't any call to action. It's giving amazing value. And then you're not even telling people how to do business with you. So we want to make sure website, correct. And then furthermore, step further would be email.
Yes.
Right. On your email list.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if they get to your website, hopefully you have some awesome piece of content that they have to opt into and they're giving you their email address. And so now you have a personal one-to-one connection with them and you're not using these other platforms. You still will, but you have an additional layer of consistently being in contact and giving them value. One thing I will say though, big disclaimer, do not put the link to the content that you want them to go to in the Facebook post because Facebook will diminish the amount of people who are going to be able to see it because Facebook wants you to stay where? On Facebook. So if you have like what we will do is shorten like bit.ly links or something that's really easy to remember and we'll actually put it on the video burned on so that it's there the whole time. Or you can say like link in comments.
I've seen people
I don't know how long.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that's going to last because Facebook at some point is going to have to get savvy to that. But for now, that's a really easy way to just get around it. Just don't ever put it in the copy.
That's just with organic content, not with paid, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Just organic. Paid is a whole different ball of wax.
Sometimes you'll see people, and that's why I wanted to ask you about this, and maybe this is part of your holistic marketing strategy. You'll see people that, and I've actually done this. So they'll have like a larger audience on one platform, and maybe let's say they're trying to grow another one. So they'll try to leverage that and say, hey, here's a YouTube video I did. Here's the link to go subscribe to my channel because I've got 20,000 or 30,000 people on this platform. Mm-hmm. My YouTube channel is brand new. Is that one of the only times that you would say it's smart to move people laterally versus downward towards your email list?
I think if you're trying to grow a different channel, I would assume that you've got some reason for that growth strategy, right? That's going to somehow benefit you in the next 3, 6, 12 months, right? So if growing that actually will show some sort of growth that is other than just like, oh, I just want a lot of followers, then yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think
it's not just a vanity play.
Exactly. And also you can get your existing audience through like your drips and stuff like that to push them to those platforms as well. But if it's a vanity play, I feel like why waste the energy on getting them somewhere that's not going to do anything for your relationship?
The reason I bring that up, Shane, is because one of the things that I'll use my own example because let's just use my example. One of the things that we've been trying to do is we started with audio, which was great. One of the things that I don't like about podcasting, and I've been open about this, I've said this on many episodes, is that there's no search on podcast episodes, right? So like in terms of getting discovered, you really have to use other platforms to drive people back in unless you're trending. Like our show, thank God we started trending on at that time, iTunes.
Yeah.
And so we got discovered by a lot of people, but then we slowly started to see our downloads when we weren't trending anymore, like start to drift away because there isn't that search like with Pinterest, like with a blog or like with YouTube.
Right.
So one of the things we've been really trying to do as of the last like 9 months to a year is, again, we're doing video podcast, is start to grow YouTube, right? We're looking at platforms. We're looking at our data and our analytics. We're showing that Instagram is just not driving a lot of CTR. It's just not.
It
engagement's
doesn't
fantastic.
generally.
There's
Yeah.
people on the platform. So we've been trying to use it, at least in some capacity, to tease our episodes to get people to YouTube and then drive them down with lead magnets, with different things, with quizzes or just stuff that's relative to the content we're producing, because that platform, the CTR, is significantly higher. Is that a strategy you would agree or disagree with in terms of that thinking?
Yeah, I think if you see your roadmap on how you're going to get people to do the last, get through the finish line, then it's smart because like you're saying, okay, you recognize that Instagram is going to at least get people to YouTube. And then your strategy from YouTube is to get them to wherever the
email
next
list.
place is. Then yeah, and everybody's strategy is going to be unique to whatever their audience is and what platforms they're living on and things like that. But I think that it's smart that you've recognized that there are multiple steps they can take to get to where you need them to land.
Yeah, because I know a lot, like at times we've talked about just shutting down our Twitter because we're not seeing a lot from Twitter, right?
Right.
And so it's like, okay, how can we if it's not working for the traditional digital marketing standpoint of lead, provide value, get them to your website, get them on your email list. How can we use it in some capacity that fits in our holistic marketing strategy? So I think that's kind of where that came from. Now, let me ask you this, and I think maybe let's backtrack a second because I think some people may be curious about this. What's this whole thing that's like, I always talk about this. I say the word blog and people are like, bleh. Like that's just like a gross, like what is this, 1995, So people are really just not interested in like going to the website, providing value in a blog, getting them to take the lead magnet, join your email list. I mean, it's been proven, right? Like that's where the money is. I equate email subscribers to literal currency. Like that is the fastest way to make money is get them on your email list. Why is that the case? Why can't you just put out some really baller stuff on Instagram and be like, yo, I got some cool stuff, buy it? Or is there stuff that you can do that? I would say some things like clothing. I found like Cuts clothing I found on Pinterest. And I was like, oh, the shirt is dope. I want this thing. So I know this isn't repurposing, but let's just make sure people have that context of why it's important to make sure you have that call to action to get them on the email list to begin with.
Yeah. So the email list gives you an opportunity to consistently market to them without having to pay for it. Because the thing is with using Instagram, like don't get me wrong, e-commerce can crush on Instagram and Pinterest all day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I was an e-commerce brand because I'm like, I could crush it. But
physical products, this is the dream. I'm telling you. Now there are other challenges with it.
I'm sure it's a whole nother set of issues, but still like the things that I know, I'm like, oh man, it'd be so much easier to do it that way. But ultimately, like you still have to pay for that action that was taken, right? The second you get them to your website and subscribe to something or opted into any, like your list, now you are constantly marketing to them until they decide they don't want to hear from you anymore. So it's like, it's a no-brainer. It's free aside from like your systems and processes once you have them on the list to market to them consistently.
Yeah. Now, so when you're repurposing content then, and how do you make sure that it kind of stays within the window of, okay, so we create this episode, right? And you're going to break it up into, different pieces of whether it's audio content or video content or what have you. And the point is get them to the email list, right? So do you have buckets of different things that you're trying to create as far as what you're going to repurpose so that you're sending them through a specific email sequence to sell a specific product, or are you that nuanced with it?
So for us, we're so niche in what our products are. Like if we were to do it, and I think we did it for a little bit, but we came away from the focus on our courses. Like we sell courses and we sell full service.
Yes.
So like we aren't like a brand that has like all these different services that we could really niche you down into. I mean, if we really wanted to get super granular with it, we probably could. But to me, I'm like, what we're giving is a very specific audience.
Sure.
And it is all kind of relative. Yeah. So, and when we stop pushing courses, that's a totally different audience for people who would rather take courses than have a services done for you. So,
and it's smart that you have both.
Yeah. It's there as a support system because ultimately, like, we just want to help content creators. And if however we can help you is great. I give away a ton of free content too. So that works as well. But I think that it is smart to think about the types of clients and the types of services or products that you provide, because one message may not align with one group of people. Like for us, like the content we put out there is really geared towards people who do the done for you solution. So we don't see a lot of action or even give a lot of calls to actions to our courses because it's not something we're super focused on at the moment. So it would be the same thing for different types of products or different types of services that you do that are, unique to each other that have a different audience. You have to speak the language of the people that you're trying to take action,
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of people feel the limitations come in, where they don't know how much of like personal stuff they should talk about, or even let's not take even to the personal side. This discussion, right? Like, how does this fit in for people that have an interview or a conversation platform like what I have? How do you then take that to make it serve what you do? Like, I take on clients and I have programs that people buy, much the same as you, information
Yeah.
products and membership and stuff like that. So I think people, they feel like they're limited. They're put in a box where they can't like fully express the things that they want to share, or limit themselves to what they can share, what their expertise involves, because they haven't figured out where that fits in those various content buckets of things they can repurpose that actually go into the things that they sell. That's why I wanted to see like what percentages you allocate to what with that.
Yeah, and that's what's tricky. A lot of it comes down to testing. I mean, put out the content and see
Yeah.
if anybody takes action on it. And you're going to learn really quick when you ask your audience what they like and what they don't
Yeah.
like, what you should be doing more
Yeah.
of.
Do you think it hurts you when, okay, so there's, maybe there's a point in time where you kind of make this transition because you just said, see what works.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a matter of, hey, let's get on the internet and let's put some stuff out there and let's see what resonates. And then we decide what we're going to build. I always talk about this. People miss out on the opportunity, I think, with social media to get that really quick velocity to feedback, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you write a blog, you're not going to know for like 6 months if that was actually irrelevant. Like it's a long, and same with YouTube. Like I talked about search and the power of search, but search takes a while for it to really like, start registering in the algorithm to show you if it's working and performing. With some of these other platforms, it's just boom, micro content, just velocity to feedback is just unbelievable.
Right.
And I think that further serves to the benefit of repurposing, because then you have, let's say this conversation, let's say we break it into multiple different pieces and there's different things that we talked about. We can probably analyze and see which one of those segments, let's say we created 4 clips, which one is something that really people wanted to hear about, and then maybe further create content based off of that particular discussion. And then even further, maybe we end up considering, hey, people, there's something here. Maybe this is something we want to start promoting to our audience, or maybe you realize that's the case and there's something that you need to start pitching to your people about, hey, we're getting a lot of traction with this particular subject as well. But my point is, does it start with just throwing out a bunch of stuff just to see and gather as much data points as possible?
Yeah, I think it certainly can. I mean, maybe don't go so crazy outside of the realm of what
Sure,
you
you're
feel
not gonna talk
like
about
is
aliens and
realistic.
crayons and
Yeah, but if you're like, hey, listen, I would be interested in this. It's not going to hurt anybody to put out content, because if it doesn't get engagement, it just doesn't get engagement. Like on to the next one, right? That's kind of the beauty and the curse of social media, is it's here today and it's gone tomorrow. So the lifespan's crazy short. So you can afford to put a bunch of content up there, because it's not going to live forever if it didn't get a ton of engagement. It doesn't really, it's irrelevant at that point.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm asking that is because there's a big issue that I see online, and I've experienced myself with online business, where you talk about so many different things because you are testing, and as a result, people don't know what the hell you do. Like they don't know how you make money, and that's kind of where this whole idea from offline business owners comes from, or just people in general, of playing on the internet, because you're not really clear in your messaging, because maybe you are testing a lot of different things. And so there isn't really a firm understanding of what you actually do as a business. Right. So I think that's where there gets to be a little bit of shades of gray of like,
sure,
okay, should I be testing, or am I really just confusing people?
Well, I mean, you have to put a limit to your testing period. Otherwise, you're forever confusing people, right?
Right.
And ultimately, like if you decide you're going to test a handful of things, test it and take your data and then move accordingly. It may also adjust kind of the service, how you offer the service. It may end up really adjusting the actual service. It could do a lot of different things once you learn what people are actually really looking at and interested in.
It's one of the things that I talk about. I want to see if you agree with this. But I think a lot of people don't value the aspect of really full immersion in their industry. And what I mean by that is they want to jump straight to digital product. Like they've never ran a business before. They want us to jump straight to selling information products. And I'm like, you have no idea what your people want. You've never worked with a client. You never have actually gotten your hands dirty in this industry, in this business, working with people face to face. If you have, what I normally tell people, then your content is going to be based off of what you've experienced. Like literally write down the 50 things that you had come up more than anything else. And there's your content bank right there. Like, and then you nuance that further, and you pick 3 or 4, like you said, you pick 3 or 4 topics inside of that one topic. And now you've got 400 pieces of content right there. And it's going to be rinse and repeat and recycle and just keep repurposing that stuff, or keep augmenting it.
Even then, that's your course content. Those are your digital assets. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so funny you said that, take the 50 things that you hear. Cause I tell people constantly, like anytime I'm talking to somebody and they're asking me these questions, like have a running list on your phone of things, like just topics that you can talk about on video. And
Yep.
just like while you're driving, when it pops up, hey Siri, add this to whatever list, and then do your filming day and do like 10 in a row, bring a couple different shirts, put up your camera, bring up a mic. It doesn't have to be that crazy. It can be quick and dirty like that. And you can get a ton of content banged out pretty quickly.
That's great. That's really good advice. Do you go as far as, and this is something we're starting to do with YouTube specifically because we're just like, fully invested in this whole YouTube world. Do you do any preliminary research of looking for trends, search on, like if you're looking at like, Google to see, Google Trends, see what's trending, see what topics people are looking for, and then create this micro content of this repurposed assets? Or do you pretty much just blind test things based off of whatever platform? Like, do you look for things that are popular and things that are trending, or things that people are searching for? Or is it just, let's just see based off of our knowledge of our industry?
The interesting thing is when we have clients come in, or when we're on sales calls, or when we're communicating with people who are just getting to know us for the first time, the questions are so consistent. Like for the last 2 years, it's been the same questions over and over and over again. So
Mm-hmm.
we have our bank of like things
Yeah,
that we know really help people. So that's always serving as like our base layer. And then we've got like the marketing team who's always on top of like new trends and writing content for that for blogs, or we'll do video
smart.
to blog for that too. But we know what our meat and potatoes are when it comes to really helping the audience.
That makes sense. That actually ties into something I was going to ask you about before, which now has come back up. And I forgot to ask you before, but now I'm going to ask you now.
Sure.
So when I ask you about big opportunities that people are missing, I think in my view, one of the things that people are missing, I want to see if you agree with me or disagree with this. I think that we have a tough time. And I was actually just talking about this recently, about how as humans, the brain has a difficult time differentiating between the two-dimensional world, right? Like I'm having a conversation with you, the human being, but it's through this weird lens of I'm literally staring at a camera, yet I'm also speaking to you and seeing you, right? Like it's
Right.
weird. So I think that many times when we have recorded content or we've written things, it feels repetitive. It feels redundant. When you repurpose, it's like, Jesus Christ, I've said this 500 times, but
Yep.
we assume wrongfully that other people have heard us say it 500 times. Like there's always going to be somebody that heard it for the first time, or that somebody that
Yep.
needed to hear it again in a different way that you presented it. Do you think that's a big opportunity for people, is that they don't continue to repurpose or restate things or record new stuff or new material that's around that same topic because they feel like, yeah, I've already talked about that. We already checked my box on that.
I hear it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Like let's just like rock the minds of people listening or watching right now.
Cool.
Like I have had this exact same conversation hundreds of times for the last 2 years. And I'm going to guarantee you that the vast majority of you guys who are listening or watching have not heard me say any of this before.
Right.
So the proof is right there. I've been saying the same thing over and over with some adjusted stats for the years, when new studies come out, but ultimately it's been the same deal. So like that should be proof enough to know that like repeat your message over and over and over again, because new audiences will always emerge based on the conversations that you're having with people.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's so weird to get used to this new medium, right? Of like promoting yourself and putting out content. And actually, Laura Roeder and I were joking around about it. This was a long time, a couple years ago, but we were joking around about it. And we were like, imagine if you went on your personal profile and you just started saying the same things every single day. People were like, what the hell is going on with him? Like,
somebody needs to help them.
Does he have dementia? Like, what's going on?
Right.
So I think that's the resistance. It just feels so unnatural to continue to restate those things over and over and over. And sometimes I even notice that in my show, even though I know what I just said. Like I inherently believe what I just said, that you have to assume that new people are always listening to your stuff and have never heard you say it for the first time. Sometimes what I will do to like give myself permission is say, no, I've said this before, but blah, 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 right? So I'm like restating it, but I'm giving it some context of like, I know I've said this a million times, but I'm saying it again. So it's just a weird like paradox to kind of overcome, I think.
It is. It's really odd, because most of like before all of these digital mediums happened, we would have these conversations in person, and you knew that the person in front of you has not heard you say it before. So it wasn't as awkward to just get in front of a camera by yourself and post it all over social media. So it's true. The issue is, you're always gaining new audiences, and and also the one thing that drives me crazy is everybody already heard me say that. I have podcasters say that to me constantly. That's why they won't repurpose their old episodes. They'll only like get excited about the new one. They're like, everybody already heard the episode from 5 months ago. I'm like, yeah, but your guest was amazing. It got 1 billion downloads. Why wouldn't you consistently be driving people back to that piece of content that you know works? Everybody didn't hear it. Like everybody.
Now, I'm glad you just brought this up, because this is a really good point and a good question, because what I don't want to have people do is take that and go the other extreme. There was, I can't remember the tool. Twitter was really bad about this a couple of years ago, especially with the follow unfollow stuff that was going on. But there was a certain tool that was it was a scheduling tool, but most of them you have to schedule it and then you have to reschedule. Like you can schedule for a month and you have to reschedule it. You can't just auto reschedule things, right? There was one, and I don't recall the name of it at this moment. Again, it was years ago, but basically it would allow you to just forever reschedule it. Right. Yeah. So like you could reschedule, repurpose, and I'm talking about repurpose content for those that wonder what I'm talking about. So like I could tweet something like, buy my stuff, and then put like a promo, whatever, image, graphic, whatever. Right. And obviously I wouldn't say specifically that, just for content, just for, reference point.
One way to do it,
Right. But then they would just retweet that like every 5 minutes from now till Kingdom Come. Right. So like that's obnoxious. That's like not human, organic, nor is it going to be effective in my opinion. And I actually had some friends, because a guy like convinced me that I should do that. And for some stupid reason, I believed him.
So it's personal.
I was doing the follow unfollow and this and that. And I'm tweeting stuff. He's like, you don't tweet enough. He's like, you need to tweet every 3 seconds. I'm like, every 3 seconds? Like, that's so obnoxious. So I started doing it. And my friends are like, bro, I'm about to unfollow you, like for real. Like, I love you, but this is annoying. So at what point is it too much? And at what point does it vary based off platform? Does it vary based off of the type of content you're putting out? How can you gauge and know velocity or frequency of content is just right for what you're doing?
Yeah. So it does vary per platform for sure. I mean, the lifespan on each platform is unique and different. Like Twitter's lifespan is 18 minutes per post. Like it only lives on the feed for 18 minutes max.
That's crazy.
And and that even feels long, right? Yeah. So like you posting on Twitter is one thing, but then posting on LinkedIn has a 24-hour lifespan. And keep in mind, guys, when I'm saying like 24-hour lifespan, it means that if nobody touches that piece of content, nobody likes it, engages with it, comments on it, it's going to have about 24 hours. Anytime somebody engages, it elongates the life. So know that if your content's getting engagement, that's not all you get out of it.
Sure.
But like every platform has a limited amount of time that it's going to live. So that should be a part of the guide to how often you need to post on your platforms. But to your point, you don't want to give them like overwhelm of content, because they're going to get sick of you, and you don't want them to have like, your brand's fatigue. That's ridiculous too. And there were a bunch of studies, and we actually I did a blog post not too long ago that talked about all the platforms and when the best times are and how often to post on them are. I don't remember off the top of my head what they were, but I do remember it was like 2 to 3 times Facebook max a day. I think 2 was like the sweet spot. Twitter was like really as much as you physically can.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it was, because it's hard to keep up. That's why for us, Twitter isn't really a big platform that we dive into, because it doesn't make sense for us to put our efforts into, because we can see better results from other platforms. But realistically, like the best like rule of thought is pick like 2, if you're just getting started, pick like 2 platforms that your audience is on, and do them well. And then once you've been doing them really well and you're consistent and you're seeing good feedback, then maybe think about bringing on another platform. But don't like half-ass 8 platforms and now you're like scattered and all over the place and people don't understand what's happening, because that's going to lead to overwhelm for you, and it's not a recipe for success at all.
That's what I hate about people that chase these shiny objects of new platforms. It's like, well, now TikTok's the big, and honestly, Shaina, I see people that I really respect, right? And they really know their stuff. And this Twitter guy, I would put him in that category, probably maybe top of the list. I'm sorry if he hears this and recognizes that it's him I'm referring to.
Sorry, Twitter
guy.
I
love you, bro. But I really, honestly, he's a really brilliant guy. And one of the things that I noticed, though, is probably his Achilles heel in business. Really believe this. As sharp as he is, and as much as he knows business, and as much as I actually do respect his business acumen, it's always about, now it's LinkedIn video. Like at that time it was Twitter, then it was Instagram, now it's LinkedIn video. And the problem is that it's just like he's just chasing these trends and not really like actually building a business. It's like, yeah, you're getting likes and engagement and this and that and video views and stuff like that. But it's like, I don't ever really see it growing his business.
Right.
And so I think people, they get so infatuated with these metrics and these numbers. So I'm so glad what you said, because it's totally in line. And my wife actually says it really, really well. And I'm going to steal this from her. I do that often. I always have to give her credit. As long as she doesn't hear me say it without giving her credit, then I'm clear.
Right, right.
I'm good. But she's an entrepreneur. She's into online educator, sells info products, has a big membership, and so on and so forth. And she says profitability over popularity. And I think that's so important. And you said it in so many ways too. You're like, I'd rather have a fraction of the followers I have, but customers, actually like real paying customers, right? So
right.
How do we not get obsessed with the metrics and chasing the shiny objects, chasing the new platform, chasing the new, the organic reach on TikTok right now is out of control. And it's like, dude, it's always going to be the next platform. It's always going to be the next thing. And you're going to, hopefully you're first to the market to get there. And I know some of the people like Gary Vee maybe kind of lend a little bit of hand into that too. Like really kind of saying like, he's kind of always one of the early adopters on these platforms. So maybe that kind of furthers some of that confusion with a lot of people. How do you kind of know these are the numbers that we want? This is what we're really paying attention to. We're ignoring the vanity. We're ignoring maybe some of the other things that don't matter, despite the fact that there's people like Gary Vee that are doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile all those things?
Well, let's just talk about Gary Vee for a second. He has a team of like 30 plus. Yeah, it's like crazy amount of people just handling his content strategy. Yep. So it's easy for him to test and play on all of the, I truly believe he has this vault where any new app that comes out, he's like, this is going to be the big new thing. And it just sits there until it becomes the big new thing. And then that piece of content comes out of him like predicting it, because it's a smart way to do it. Right. But ultimately it's not a realistic way for entrepreneurs or personal brands or anything like that to really think that their content strategy is going to look like that. That's crazy. So as far as like, oh my gosh, I forgot what the beginning of the question was. I got on that Gary Vee train
metrics
really quick. Metrics. Thank you. Yeah. I think that your metrics have to extend past what's happening on the social media channel. And those are the metrics that matter. Like seeing how they got from A to the Z, and is that working on Facebook? Is that working on Instagram? Is that working on LinkedIn? What does that look like? Because again, like you can't deposit the likes. Is it helping your business? And what are the metrics that matter to your business in your social media strategy? And you need to look at the full scope as opposed to just like how many hearts you got on your Instagram post on Thursday. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then once you really know what those need to look like, then go test another platform, but don't abandon the stuff that's working and actually lean into it and then test and see if it's working. I mean, it's cool to try the new things. Don't get me wrong. Right. Don't be afraid, but do it with intention and strategy behind it.
But do hearts and likes and shares that leads to them engaging, which leads them getting to your email list or your website and then your email list. So I think, it's difficult because you do get excited. And this is like you're challenging your own neurological wiring. Like you get a dopamine hit when you get that engagement. Like it's exciting.
That's why it's so popular, right?
Right. It's why that's why they made them the way they did. So I think it's hard for people to kind of, if I put something on Twitter and no one hearts it, no one likes it, it's like wah wah. So it's like I have that little bit of disappointment. I'm not focused on the real metric, but it's like, how do you? Yes, you want the engagement because engagement likely means they're actually going to take action, right? So right. So you want it to work. You want the like we're not saying that engagement's bad. We're just saying you need to reconcile the fact that you also need it to do something for you, correct?
Exactly. You have to measure the amount of effort you're putting into it versus what the outcome is, right? Like for me, one interesting lesson that I had to learn was that when I took like a hiatus for like about 3 weeks, maybe a month, like maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And before that, I was super, super active on LinkedIn. Every day, commenting, engaging, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I take this hiatus, the business is going to suffer because I'm so active on this platform, but I have to do this. And I was not active for like 3 weeks and our business grew faster than it had in like the amount of time, like the leading up to that time period. And it was for other efforts as well. Sure. But like my personal brand didn't contribute as much as I thought to the business, the actual outcomes to the business. And don't get me wrong, that may not be the case with all things, but my personal brand is not what's selling. Sure. My business has its own brand. So like you can measure that. For me, it was like all the effort that was put into being like aggressive on that platform was probably not worth what the outcome was. You know what I mean? So while we still put effort into it, it's just, I know other means that I can actually generate the revenue a little bit more effectively and efficiently.
What do you think about, there are people that believe, and maybe this is just me, maybe I'm in my own head about this, or I was at some point, people that get on a platform, I think that they believe that they have to have a certain amount of followers, or they have to put out a certain amount of content. They have to do they have to reach a milestone before they're going to do the things that we're talking about that really matter, like getting people on your email list. Tell us why that's a complete false narrative. Like, could you get on tomorrow on Instagram, start a new Instagram account, start putting out content, and start expecting to grow your email list?
So first of all, it's backwards. You have to have the back end in line that you want them to do, instead of starting to build an audience that you're sending to nowhere. You know what I mean? Because you may have had somebody who was really interested in a piece of content that you didn't tell them what to do next. And then they never looked at your content again. Like, you lost that as an opportunity to capture their info, right? So for me, and I mean, this is just kind of how I feel about it. I don't know that this is total best practice, but I feel like have your systems at least in line to capture their information before you start putting out this valuable content, because you're missing out on opportunities to get their info. But also, like, it takes time to build brands. And unless you're doing a ton of cross promotion or you're putting ad spend behind it, it takes time to build brands on social media platforms. So as long as your message is really, really helpful and you're doing it strategically, like your headlines are really catchy, and like there's a lot of psychology around the headlines you put on your videos, and you're doing all the best practices like captions and things like that, that's the best that you can do. And then as it grows organically, it grows organically, unless you want to put some more budget behind it.
Interesting. That's really good advice. I know that's a big question that a lot of people have, is they don't treat it seriously. Like they could actually do anything with it. Even, they're like, I got to get to 5,000 first, for followers.
Who cares?
And it's like, they spend a year, 2 years, or 3 years trying to get to that point. And meanwhile, they're just putting out all this free resources into the abyss and not actually trying to do anything with that.
Right.
So when it comes to you actually repurposing content, then are you attaching some kind of call to action on pretty much everything you do that's business related, not personal posts? If you're out, whatever, I think you said walking your dog or something like that, then probably not a call to action there. Like, hey guys, walking my dog, make sure to go sign up for my email list. Right? But also, but people might do it. But
you never know.
So I see a couple of different mistakes. That's one of the ones that I see, is that there's never a call to action, right? It's just like amazing, like gangbuster stuff that's like really, really good.
Yeah.
And then there's no call to action, or the call to action is really weak. Like, sign up for updates. It's like, dude, no one gives a shit about your updates. Like like nobody, like, who wants I don't want updates. I want, what I'm saying? Like, what do I need another update in my life?
I'm trying to eliminate that stuff from my inbox, right? Like, I don't want that.
Right. So kind of help people reconcile, okay, what should a real call to action look like with the content that I'm putting out? Is it too aggressive? I think people feel too salesy when they like put out stuff, and then every time they're trying to sell, again, that whole narrative about you're saying things over and over again, but every time, they feel like they're pitching, after all their content or something. Yeah. So how do you kind of go about it to where it doesn't feel salesy? Should it feel salesy? How do you navigate it to people where they feel like they want to take action on the next steps? And then when do you use a call to action, when not to?
Yeah. So I think that like the first and easiest question to answer is when to use a call to action is going to be if whatever that call to action is relevant to whatever the content is that they're watching, reading, like listening to, that kind of thing. Cool. If it's relevant, then okay, so use the call to action. Time. If you're walking the dog, then, unless you're a dog walking service, I don't know what your CTA is going to be. Yeah. But as far as how to make them feel warm and fuzzy about taking the next step, make it first of all, it should feel like a value add to them. Like, you should not be like, buy my stuff. Like, unless you're e-commerce, that's different. But like, if it's content and you're nurturing people who maybe have not engaged with your brand, that's like a creepy guy with like a trench coat coming up and trying to sell you a Rolex on the side of the street. Like, they don't know you. They haven't built trust. Like, that's creepy. So why would you ever just go up to somebody and tell them to just buy from you if you don't have a relationship with them? Yeah. So saying, hey, listen, this piece of content is a shorter snippet of a longer piece of content. And if you found this beneficial, then you're definitely going to find that beneficial. And that's how you get them to take step one, make them feel like you're giving them more, because really you are. And then there you can go to the next step where it's like, hey, download this extra awesome thing that would be even more helpful, that complements the content that you're looking at. And then that's how you now have their email address, but they've also received something in return that was beneficial to them. People are more willing to give when they feel like they're receiving. So you have to play that accordingly. And it's a delicate balance, and that takes some testing too.
Yeah, I think, that's a really good answer. Thank you. I really feel like also people they get to a certain point where they just keep delivering free stuff and they're like too afraid
Yeah.
to ask for the sale. Right. It's like, so they just
Right.
keep, and I think they start training, they start telling themselves that everybody's a freebie seeker. But do you think it's just that they haven't taken like, so I'm just want you to give people permission if this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Content, let's say Instagram, IGTV video, right? Hey, if you like this, you're going to love what I have because there's a whole blog that talks about it. And there's actually a free resource that we included with it. The link's included in my bio. Grab it, go check it out, whatever. They go do that. They sign up for the email list.
Yep.
At that point, I would think you could send them immediately on an email sequence and start trying to sell them X product that ties to whatever it is that you actually have outlined as that ties to that lead magnet. Is that acceptable?
I think that, I think there's a little bit of nurturing that should be wrapped up in there.
Sure.
Because it shouldn't just be now every time you email them, you're asking them for the sale. You still give value and still give more content, but nothing that like is in excess. Like people understand that you're still a business. Sure. I can't fathom that they're going to be like, this guy just gives everything away for free and survives. You know what I mean? So, I mean, as long as you're still giving value, speaking in the voice that you like, we're very like sarcastic and kind of like
sure.
off the hip a little bit in our marketing. And
it makes it more,
it makes it just more palatable to talk to people via email when they're kind of feeling like you're intruding on their day anyway. But
less
you can
use car salesman.
Right. So but you can ask them, like they've invited you into their inbox, which is kind of a big thing now. So if they feel like you've already given them value and they've taken the step to give you that kind of access, then you should look at it like they're already getting value out of this. I can give them so much more value if they invested in me, this product, whatever. Don't look at it like you're selling them and that it's creepy. You're helping them. And if they see the value in it too, if they thought your content was valuable, then they want to take that next step. That's how you get them as a client. Yeah.
Ryan Dice, over at Digital Marketer, I was reading Invisible Selling Machine. I don't know if you've read that or not, but one of the things I call it the Ryan Dice death sequence. Because literally it's like it's borderline like threatening that, like I'm joking, I'm exaggerating, but it's very aggressive. It's very aggressive. And what's crazy is that I even felt a little uncomfortable about it. And like we've reworded it so it's a little bit less what I feel to be abrasive. Oh my gosh, my open rates and my click rates are just absurd. Like
I'm sure
absurd, like 15, I think it's like 15 to 20% click and like almost 50% opens.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Really?
Really high. And but one of the things that he says that's really important that I think, and why I want to ask you this question is, he says, I don't know what hour window he provides, but basically like when you first have an email subscriber join your email list, there's a unique opportunity where you go from, here's this person that I now become a super fan of, to, oh wait, yeah, I don't really remember subscribing to this. Who's this person emailing me now? Like, he's like, you have to capitalize on that moment, because if 3 years down the road, sure, it's a small likelihood that they'll end up buying something from if you did like some kind of promotion, but that first however many hours, right? First week, let's say, I don't know if he specifies, specifically a week, but when they first join your list, that's your chance to become a super fan, or for them to become a super fan of you and your work. So that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I think the reason I see that, Shaina, sorry, I'm being long-winded here.
No, you're fine. I love it.
Is people do all this work. They repurpose all this content. They put all this hours in this stuff, and their stuff is fantastic. And they go spend all this money on all this equipment, and it's great. It's fantastic. And they're probably even paying a virtual assistant, right? And they don't ask for the damn sale. They get them on the email list, and they don't even send a follow-up. It's just like, why did you do... Like, that's like running a marathon and getting to the final and be like, yeah, what's up, homie? I'm just going to stand here and let everybody else run through and just win. And I'm just going to wait and hang out. And it's like, you're there. Like,
you're there. They're ready.
Yeah. So I think that's, and we've all kind of struggled with that. Like, I think the online world has become like, we're too afraid to ask for the sale. We're too like afraid to just be like, purely, I'm a business and this is transactional. As much as I love you and as much as I love creating this content, I see that struggle a lot. And I felt it too. And it's like, what is going on with me? I've been in businesses before where we've sold $100,000 contracts. Why am I struggling with asking for a $9 mini course for a sale of that? Like, that's ridiculous. That's so stupid.
It is ridiculous. I know. And people are afraid to do it because it's incredible to me that people are more afraid of digital anonymous rejection than they are of in-person rejection. It boggles my mind. Digital has really messed with people's heads a little bit, but ultimately, like, you're right. There's a window that you have to like create the, like that fear of missing out. Like there's a whole bunch of psychology behind like the drips and how you create them and stuff like that. Actually, I haven't read Ryan's. I've seen a ton of them though.
It's really
So
good.
I'll check Ryan's out for sure.
It's really good because it's going to force you to try something that feels like, oh God, like somebody's going to be mad at me, but they're going to unsubscribe. It's like, dude, I don't care. Like,
but if they do unsubscribe, that's okay. They're not going to give you the sale.
The way
you want them to unsubscribe.
Right. The way that I try to tell people is like, don't look at it from a standpoint of like, well, screw you. You don't like me. You left my email list. It's like, sometimes people come into your store and they don't buy anything. And that's okay. Right. Like that's fine. Like you're not going to get mad at every person that comes into your store and then they leave without buying something. Like that's so ridiculous. You're not going to be like, hey, come back here. You know? That's
a great way of putting it. I love
that.
Like,
so I think we have to start creating these linear connections, right? Neurologically to try to like make people understand that like, dude, it's okay, bro. Like they left your email list. Yes, they took your lead magnet and they bailed and that's going to happen. It's totally cool. But I'm with you though. I think the main thing is that if you have something that's worth selling and you put all this work into creating the content to begin with and then repurposing it, like the whole goal is you have to believe in what you're selling and believe in what you're preaching and teaching so much that you literally feel like you're stealing a resource from their lives if they don't take you up on what is it you're selling. And I think if it comes from that place of integrity, then I think you sell with confidence, right? It's not, oh, please, like pretty please. Because then I think it also hurts your messaging too. When you're not like being aggressive about it, you're like, well, for a limited time only, you can get it for $1. And it's like, bro, this is worth way more than $1. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Now you've decreased the value of what you've created to everybody that you're saying that to. Yeah. You should definitely see value in what you've created and know that it's going to bring positive effects to people who might buy it. And that's good for everybody, including the buyer.
Yeah. And I'm not totally not being critical for those that are listening. If all these imitations that I'm doing are probably the ones that were in my own head and probably still are somewhat in my own head. All right. So just know that I'm not making fun of you. I'm more so making fun of myself. Yeah, cool. All right. So I gotta let you run. We gotta stop coming up here in a few minutes. But this was fantastic. It was a great conversation. And I want to give you a chance to let people learn more about what you're doing. I'm sure there's a lot that we could talk for several more hours about content. I mean, content is just a never ending discussion and it's always changing and algorithms are always changing and strategies are always changing. So for people that want to follow up and continue to kind of see what you're up to, what you're doing and so on and so forth, where can they go to do so?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am Shaina Weisinger on all the social platforms. And like I said, there will be dog photos mostly on Instagram. So we're all clear. But ultimately like the best resource that I can give is the Repurpose House website. It's just repurposehouse.com. We have tons of blog posts. We're always like touching base on the newest trends in social and repurposing content. A lot of that base layer stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
We have courses if you're looking to figure out how to do this stuff yourself. We are a done for you service where we can go through your content, find the clips to repurpose it, post it to your social all the way from A to Z or pieces of that if it works. So realistically, you can land on the site and be helped in so many different ways, even before it comes down to purchasing a service or, a course like that. So
I love it. And guys, 100% go follow them on social media because guess what you can learn? Get some inspo, get some ideas. I'm always shadow following people. So go shadow follow some experts and connect with her too. Do that as well.
Say hey.
Say hey.
I'm friendly.
Awesome. Shaina, thank you. This was amazing conversation. I appreciate you dropping by and best of luck to you. Thanks so much for sharing your amazing insights with my audience.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Right.